Welcome to the We Are All Dying podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Goodhand, and my hope is that through these conversations, we become more comfortable, competent, and confident talking about death. On today's show, we have Brie Smith from Return Home Green Funeral Services in Auburn, Washington, and we talk all things death and all things human composting. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's conversations. Welcome, Brie, to the show. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you, Jenna. I'm just really glad to be on today and to talk to you.
Yeah, there are so many things I want to explore with you today, but I would love to just start with your own personal experience and what you remember of death at an earlier age, or how death sort of came into your life and your knowings.
That's a really interesting question. I think it's kind of multifaceted in my case. I grew up in a home with law enforcement as a career for several of my uncles, my grandfather, and my father. So I was exposed at a very young age to maybe more the realities of life of, my dad working a really difficult job. And then in the summer times, I was born and raised in Montana, and we would go to the ranch in a very small town on the east side of the state. And I think growing up around, it's a tough environment. You have to be a certain kind of person to handle it. And you're raised around it, so you're exposed to a lot of death and just the circle of life and how we kind of operate as a society really at its ground roots and its grassroots. And so I think the mixture of the two gave me this comfort maybe with death that ended up manifesting itself. Actually, my mother was a cosmetologist, so she would take me some evenings to go with her to do hair and makeup for the decedents who had been embalmed, who were going to be seen the previous or next day. And she tells the story that one night I was kind of sitting on the counter coloring or drawing, and a broom fell over. I don't know if I bumped it or what happened, but my mom freaked out, and I just looked at her and I was like, Mom, she's not going to hurt you. Like, we're good. And I was maybe 6, 7. So the comprehension of it all from a very young age was very much there.
Wow, that is so interesting and definitely very unique. So did you notice, like with your peers or other people, that you had this level of comfort that they didn't? Like, were there times where, you just having a casual conversation about what you did on the weekend or the stories in your life, and they showed their discomfort or misunderstanding?
Yeah, I mean, I'd never like to really go there, but to say I was kind of that science biology girly at a very young age, I would always go out and I was like a fan of collecting rocks and, where other girls maybe were playing with Barbies, I was literally just like petting a rock like a baby rabbit, so there was something always a little bit different for sure. Um, but always just a real curiosity with all things nature, and that includes the cycle of life and seeing it go from start to end and then begin again.
Absolutely. Okay, so can you fill in the gap between young Brie petting a rock and, growing up with these situations to where you are to now and being a funeral director?
Yeah, for a lot of my youth, I was very athletic, sports oriented, and I always knew that I was going to get into medicine. And I really thought for a long time it would be sports medicine. I ended up actually getting kind of sick during my freshman year of college. And so I dropped out and I had to stay at home, got treatment for what I have. And when I was out, I was 20, 21 years old. And I had just missed out from 18 to 20 on that like formative years of your life where you're making decisions, you're going to school and you're becoming a better person, hopefully. And I hadn't progressed at all. I was a really good gamer. I was really good at video games because I hung out a lot and sat a lot due to my illness. But unfortunately, that wasn't really a thing back then. There wasn't like Twitch, so I couldn't do anything with it. Um, so yeah, I basically, to be frank, I knew because of a senior high school anatomy and physiology class that I took, that I was really good at restorative art. we took the skull and we had to use erasers to determine the depth of the face based on the race and the sex of that individual. And I replicated it very closely, and I was, 17 or whatever. So when that happened, I knew that there was something in me that had a gift in that way. So when I got out, I started thinking about both my skills and the gifts that I was given, and of course, the amount of time that school takes because I had lost a couple of years, and found a mortuary school in Mesa, Arizona. That was a 1 year condensed program that's actually phenomenal. And so I moved to Arizona. I finished my prereqs, did mortuary school, and made my way to Washington. In Washington, I'm a licensed funeral director and embalmer. I've been here for 10 years. And yeah, I've been a traditional industry person. So, as many cremations as anybody I know, less embalmings because I live in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, where that's not very common, but it does happen. And so I've embalmed a lot. And now I am working for a company called Return Home. I'm the chief operating officer, and I compost people at the end of their life instead of incinerating or embalming them.
I love it. Oh, this is so good. Okay. Um, can you share what a funeral director does for people who don't know, or maybe there's like some crossover in different roles around death that people aren't sure who does what? When I think of a director, I think of someone like kind of like, coordinating like a play or something and like directing a scene. What exactly is the role of a funeral director? And is there some variations
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah, so there's two kind of distinct roles in what we consider the death care industry, and those would be your funeral directors, who are more trained in the art of funeral directing, counseling, and family mediation, and history of funeral profession and where it came from. And, it's a little bit more focused on the paperwork and the ability to serve, maybe grief support, things of that nature. And then the second half, of course, is your embalmers. These are your scientific people. These are people who like to work with their hands and take something and make it look like itself again, if that's possible, in many facets. And it's not just, embalming. Some are, taxidermists, and there's it's a preservation, this group of people, but specifically embalmers. Um, and so you've got these two different facets of the job, and then there's those of us who do both and can merge those worlds in a successful way. Um, and so, oftentimes you find that the funeral director is definitely a little more squeamish. Um, they're going to probably be the family counselor. So they're going to be the person who takes you by the hand and really guides you through the process. And then your embalmers and what I would call support staff would be the people who are in the back preparing loved ones. Bathing and embalming is preserving and disinfecting. So they're bathing them. They're either preserving them or not. They're cremating. They're placing people in caskets, dressing them, those types of things.
In the role of funeral director, when you're counseling with families at what is often the most hardest time in their life, what are some skills that you've acquired from having to be there in those really hard moments?
I think the main skill that I've developed is the ability to listen. I think it's underappreciated what an open ear can do, especially when someone's in pain. And like you said, it's the hardest time of their life. So they've lost their loved one. Oftentimes, it's their best friend. It's the person that they come home to and swing the door open, and it's, theirs, and it's gone forever, that relationship. So, I think listening, I think also just being a calming presence. I feel like maybe that was something that is innate to me as an individual and many funeral directors, because a lot of us are service oriented people. So,
Mm.
you see waiters and waitresses are a really good example, but thriving in absolute chaos. Like they really can keep themselves together and they can sort things mentally. The skill set's really similar, actually. So I was a server when I wasn't well in my mom's owned restaurants my whole life too. So that was really easy for me to adapt to, was kind of the service mentality. So listening and just being a constant like pillar of support. somebody that people can really truly count on, lean on. Um, if I say I'm going to do research to help you with something, I'm going to do it and I'm going to get back to you and I'm going to take weight off of the load that you're carrying. And as much as I can do for people, that's how I feel I'm the most successful with my job for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, in a lot of situations, these are people you've never met before, and all of a sudden you're being brought into a very intimate time in their life. But it made me think of, those of us who are the ear or the shoulder for loved ones in our lives who are going through loss. Um, are there some strategies or some tips that you could suggest for how, the listener or the caregiver or support system can manage and process like having that those heavy feelings or that sadness kind of in their world as well as they're trying to be a support?
Yeah, it's really hard, right? Because
It is.
you connect and I'm sure you've experienced this. I think everybody's experienced it if they've lost someone or had someone who means a lot to them lose someone or an animal or, um, but I think being able to focus on the person and to not absorb it and not really make it about you. I do feel that there's a tendency and it's well-meaning. It absolutely is, but for people to give advice um, things of that nature are not helpful to either party because what happens is you give the advice and then the person does not take the advice because they're not listening to anything you're saying. They have no capacity to pull in and retain for long amounts of time when you're in the real throes of grief. I mean, I've had people come to me 6 months later and be like, I don't remember signing paperwork with you. Like, I need a copy of it because I don't. And so I think that for you, as somebody who might absorb the energy of somebody who's lost someone, focusing on that person and just giving back to them. And then at the end of the day, I mean, laying down on a pokey mat to release some tension from your back or, some foot soak self-care. I mean, definitely self-care is becoming more of a priority to me because I know that if I am unwell, I can't take care of others who are unwell. And so I think pushing self-care is something I do with my staff too. I make them leave early sometimes. I make them, not take phones, laptops on vacation. I don't want to see these things. I want you to take care of yourself first so you can take better care of the people we serve.
Beautiful. And so now you're composting people. Can
I am.
let's talk about what that means. And I mean, I know through just the short journey I've had with this podcast, it's dependent on location geographically. It's not possible everywhere, but more and more people are like, I want that. Like, where do I go to get it? So, can you tell me a little bit about maybe like the history behind it? Is this like a resurrection of something we used to do? Is this totally new? Yeah, everything human composting. Go.
Okay, yeah, let's get into it. So I think it's good to have context why I left. Um, why did I leave what I knew for something that is so very unfamiliar and like you said, very niche, to say I was burnt out is an understatement and it is literal. It's a pun. It is what it is. But in King County and in Washington State, over 80% of our decedents are cremated. And there's something that people don't talk about, and that's the crematory operator. It was very hard for me as an individual with the spirit and the emotion that I have as far as my capacity to burn people all day. It was very difficult. And so I was about literally 1 foot out the door, about to take my second step out of the industry as a whole, when I got a phone call from this gentleman, Micah Truman. Um, I answered it. I was out in the cemetery and I go, hi, how can I help you? And he goes, Brie, I've heard of you and I know who you are and I know what you stand for. And I want to show you a warehouse in Auburn, Washington that's not got anything in it yet. I just want to walk you around it. And normally that would be a very strange phone call to receive, but I knew of Micah already because I was interested in the green space and had tried to reach out to an originator of this process to get information, and they were not forthcoming at all, which is why I'm so forthcoming because I believe this should be known. But ultimately, I had known Micah because he was kind of a little bit more forthcoming. He was talking about it, he was talking about how it works. And so he took me to this warehouse. And I walked around with him and he explained to me, we take a vessel. It's 8 foot by 3.5 foot by 3.5 foot. And we fill it halfway with organics, straw, alfalfa, and sawdust. And he just walked me through this idea and what you can see online if you've seen any of our videos, or really our website too. But ultimately, this vessel that's filled part way with this mixture of organics that naturally begins to rise in temperature because there's alfalfa in it and nitrogen rich alfalfa and straw that insulates, become a really beautiful mixture that will automatically begin to kind of compost itself. What happens is when you add a human body on top of that mixture of organics and you make their little, their little cradle and you make them their little pillow and they're all snuggied in there and their body's exposed, the microbes that consume your food when you're living, and the reason why when you exercise your tummy will get like really cold, or if you have to use the restroom your tummy starts to get hot, like there are these microbes and they're there but you don't think about what they are, but they're going to eventually break you down when you die. And so we took that has happened forever and is in nature when leaves fall, or grass is mowed and becomes one with the grass beneath it, and we place those people in that vessel and optimize the breakdown of the body ultimately. Our process is different for a couple of reasons, and we're very specific because we gently transform people. There's no agitation, there's no movement of the vessel until about 3 weeks in, when we externally rotate, which if you have composted or know anything about it, you do have to make sure that the microbes are evenly distributed at some point. But ultimately, we have this amazing dialed process where the body goes into the vessel, and after about 30 to 60 days, all that remains inside will be bone, and then anything that was not organic in that person's body. We call them squishies and hards because people tell us about the hards. They tell us about titanium rods and stents and screws, pacemakers. They don't tell us about implants and silicone and, all of those adventurous things that we can find. So what we do is after the body has completely transformed in that vessel, we actually do what they do after cremation, which is we screen the body and the compost for those inorganics and we pull them out. We recycle them if we can. And then the compost and the bones all go through a piece of proprietary machinery that make them uniform, so you can't tell the difference. After that takes place, it's another 30 days before we can return that person to their family, because the compost is at that point completely dead microbially as far as like the breakdown of the body is concerned. The tissue is completely gone. But what happens is when we expose the porous inside of the bone, the microbes can then consume the bone and it becomes one with the compost. So we do another 30 days. So if you're tracking at this point, we're at 60 to 90 days. And at the end of that process, we return home to families of really, really beautiful, life-giving, able to be handled, pathogen-free, teramated remains is what we call them. And we
Wow,
call it teramation.
amazing. So, in that final compost, is it just the remains, or is there some of that other material that you've added to it as part of
It's
it?
both. So yeah, the person and the organics within become one. And that's why we actually, at the end of the process, end up with about 250 pounds of the teramated remains. And that's organic material that would go back into the earth, right? So I like to think about it like if society didn't exist the way it does and we lived out in nature and we were homesteading or whatever we were doing, but ultimately somebody just goes out for a hike and they never come back, what would happen to their body is it would break down slowly over time and then it would become one with the world around it. And that's what we try to do in return home is make sure that that person is seen instead of just being left out, right, to go. Because with cremation, a lot of times people come in, they take your person away, you never see them again, not ever.
Mhm.
And so in this case, we've got a lot of organic mass. It's important that it goes back into the earth. It can be shared, like cremated remains can, or it can all go in one place if that's a religious preference or there's a preference there. Um, and so it's just really amazing to see this like full circle situation take place with these families where they're grieving the whole time we're with them, but then on the other end, they see the loved one's life live on through that compost. And it really does work because it's full of magnesium and phosphorus and phosphates that I don't even know the names of, and carbon, and all of these things that the soil really actually quite likes. And so yeah, it's so beautiful, and that's way more fulfilling to me than just returning a box of cremated remains to somebody, actually.
Yeah, I think also just, we're really tuned in to how damaging we are as humans to this planet. So to think that maybe, as our last final hurrah, we can actually do something good for the planet is a nice sentiment, right? Instead of just adding more chemicals or more waste, or taking up more space in a different way. It's also a beautiful way to kind of honor the planet.
I
Um,
think about it like
yeah,
people live so much more sustainably now, and they're
yeah,
so much more mindful that why would you live and really dedicate your life to that and then end on burning yourself up,
yeah.
or yeah, it just to me there's a super huge disconnect. People don't really want to talk about it, but you do, Jenna, and I like that. Yeah, because it needs to be talked
Thanks,
about.
thanks, Brie. I think it's also, what I'm coming to learn is like people just don't talk about death at all. So like no one's planning how they want their body to be dealt with, even if they're so conscious on some level. It's like they're looking at what's in my kitchen and what kind of clothes am I wearing? Am I like they're thinking of all the eco things they can do, but they don't want to talk about death. So then it comes to this point, the family's left to decide what do we do? They're they're distraught, they're upset, and so they just go for maybe like a traditional way or the direction of somebody who doesn't have these options for them. And so, a couple questions. Um, are people receiving like that full 250 pounds if they want?
Yes, we just did the
Wow.
numbers actually. About 60% of our
Yeah.
families take the full amount of their loved one with them. And if they can't, we have about 10-minute drive from our facility. We call it the Woodland. It's a state certified green belt that can never be developed upon. And that's where if the family can't, if they just want an urn sized amount, we can
Mhm.
accommodate that. And then their loved one goes to support the local flora and fauna.
That's so beautiful. So, again, kind of considering that it's kind of state by state, how common is this now? Um, do you
Yeah,
have numbers on like
I do.
how many pounds or tons of human compost you created?
Well, actually, I could probably do the math. We've served about 160 families,
Wow.
and if that's 250 pounds, I mean, my brain can't do that, but
Yeah,
somebody out there can quickly. And but I mean, it's when we used to just die and give that organic mass to the earth, or we would use the restroom on the earth and give it back, and we had a healthier planet. And because
yeah.
we don't do that with as much frequency as we progress and technology progresses and sewage systems and everything kind of gets put into place, the fact that we can give families back this full 250 pounds and they want to take it and they actually want to put it back into the earth is just the most beautiful thing. Um, and that doesn't stop people from doing like the house plant. I mean, but a big part of why people decide to do this is one, because it's gentle, and two, because you're putting mass back into the earth that really needs to go back into the earth that we're
Mhm.
depriving it of.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's just like, yeah, I'm trying to think of all the questions other people might have too. So when people are put into this beautiful little cozy bed of nutrients, can family members be present? Like, how much can family members be a part of this process? That maybe in other ways we do kind of feel disconnected from the cremation or the embalming and things like that.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you asked because that was another thing that felt really odd as a traditional funeral industry professional, right? Is the removal of the hands loving you in life. Yeah, I mean, I didn't love the person I'm touching ever. I don't know them 98% of the time. So why have we removed that? And that was the question that I couldn't help but ask myself when I started Return Home with Micah. I was just thinking to myself, like something has always felt off. So what we did is we just started asking questions, really simple. It started with a mother whose son was scared of
Mhm.
flying, and they were from a different state. Like you mentioned, there's 6 states that have legalized the process, and more every day. I just testified in Maine, actually. So it's becoming broad reaching, and this family was from out of state. The young man was afraid to fly, and his mother couldn't put him on an airplane to transport him to us. She just couldn't, because he would have never wanted that. And it was really important to her. So I just asked, I was like, well, I'm by myself here. So, like, I can't come get him. That is not possible. But you can bring him to me. You can drive him to me. And she and I had this moment of we were both feeling really uncomfortable because I had never mentioned or asked the question, and she had never thought of that as an option. And it ended up manifesting in one of the most beautiful moments of my whole
Mhm.
career, which was meeting her super late on a weekend and pulling her son from that vehicle with her, and
Mhm.
her putting her hands all over his body and just brushing his hair and touching his cheeks and his hands and just loving him, right? Um, that changed everything. So from that point on, we decided Return Home is going to be of its namesake as well. We offer full home service, so we will come to your home and get your loved one on ice and prepared so they can stay at home for long periods of time. We aid in transport. If you want to transport your loved one, you can bathe your loved one. We are embalmers, Katie and myself. We give everyone a bath because we disinfect and no longer preserve, but we're still embalmers, and that's still important to clean people. It's basic dignity to do that. So you can join us for no charge to bathe your loved one. And then we do have the service, of course. We call it a lay-in, which is where the person is placed in their vessel, and the family can put anything biodegradable, compostable, ingestible in the vessel with their loved one. Lots of stories about things that people have placed, but we had, for instance, a young, she was Pacific Islander. They ordered the most gorgeous flowers you've ever seen. I mean, ever. I've seen a lot of funeral flowers, nothing like this. And they put them with her. It was so gorgeous. So you can really do something meaningful in that way. But then also the outside of the vessel, because of the way we designed our technology, we want everybody to be an individual. We don't want everybody to be part of a scheme. We want everybody to be them because that's who they were. And so families can then decorate the outside of the vessel. And during that first 30 to 60 days, they can continue to visit. So it's almost like a cemetery in a way, temporary one. But they can literally be with their person from the time of death to the placement in the vessel and beyond. We encourage the hands that love them in life to continue loving them in death. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm sorry if I missed this. The vessel, what is it made of, and does it become a part of the compost?
Yeah, so the vessel itself is actually just a polycarbonate mix, and it is sanitizable, so they are reused after the process takes place. So it's just straw, alfalfa, sawdust, and the person, and then water, of course, because moisture levels. We're monitoring moisture, temperature, and oxygen 24/7, nonstop.
Wow. So for people who haven't been to your website yet or might forget to go there later, what does this place look like? Just rows of vessels? It's hard to kind of imagine your workplace.
Yeah, so we're the largest in the whole world right now, which is pretty incredible.
Congratulations.
I mean, we did it with intention. We never wanted people to sit and wait. Not ever. Like I wouldn't pick it if my grandma had to sit and wait. I just wouldn't. So because I know what the implication of refrigeration is, and I just so anyway, we have a warehouse. I mean, it is what it is. I would like to see about other, options in the future as we expand, certainly. But if you come to our flagship location, you're going to go to a district in Auburn, Washington that is a little bit industrial for sure. Um, you will drive up to the facility and it begins becoming more green the closer that you get to our facility. And as soon as you walk in, it's basically just an urban jungle. I clearly have a problem. Katie also has a serious issue. Actually, hers is worse than mine. But we made it with the intention of bringing a sense of life to the space as soon as you walk in. So you're going to see that, live edge tables. We did the thing that the nature people do in Seattle. We just made everything as on brand as we could, but it's cozy and it's comfy. And then in our warehouse where the vessels are kept, we put up these kind of like rolling facade walls, because what we found is, and this is so sad and sweet, and like I didn't know how to process it, but there would be somebody who visited who didn't put the pictures up, and then they would feel bad. They'd be like, "Oh, I didn't invest in my person." And I was like, "My God, that's not at all what that is. You didn't invest any less, you know." And I had to, so we came to the conclusion that we will roll the slide so that people can see their loved one and spend time and touch and be with their loved one. But when you enter the facility, it's just trees.
Mm.
There's just a bunch of trees. It just looks like the Pacific Northwest. It looks like our woodland. And that's the kind of uniformity that makes people feel less bad if they didn't do the above and beyond and, above reproach kind of loving their person, when I'm sure they show their love in different ways. And so there's no shame. But we did put the facades up for that reason. And we've got murals. We've got a couple murals in the facility. So paintings that are nature inspired, and we just try to make it really cozy. There's pod seating, so we have like these round rugs with a chair and a couple like stacked pillows. And so when people come, we just slide one of those over to their person. We play whatever music they like, and then they can sit there, sit on the ground on their little pillow, read, eat lunch, all sorts of things people do with us. But that's what you would kind of experience if you had a loved one in our care.
So beautiful and intentional. Like yeah, very,
So
very
much
thoughtful on
intention.
every level. Yeah. So, have you had any loved ones go through this experience that you've been present for?
No, no. I thank goodness. I have very little family as it is, and the ones that are here have hung around. So I'm really grateful for that. That was the question, right? If someone
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I I don't think any of us have yet. I'm trying to think. We did have a little puppy die, and we considered doing the terramation, but you can't mix the people vessels with the animal vessels, of course, and you can't do them in the same facility. So they just did a little green burial for Coco. Coco Wong passed away, but actually, that's the only death I've had that was of someone that was Micah's doggy, and not human yet. But that said, my grandparents have pre-planned, and they have already transferred their their service over from a cremation, and it's double the cost, so they had to pay double, and are very glad that they did it, and they're happy with their decisions. So
So
I'll
it's so
compost them
interesting.
eventually. Ugh.
Yeah. Wow. So, like, what has this meant for you? You were, one step out of the industry. This came along. You're obviously so passionate and invested in this. Like, how do you feel being a part of this for people?
It's been multifaceted because of our reach, I guess I would say. First and foremost, I've developed the most meaningful relationships I've ever developed. If you read our Google reviews, they're from people who chose us, and that's so overwhelming. It's just like the fact that we brought any semblance of peace or comfort to what they were going through, and then they chose to talk about it. Um, those types of feelings are the original feelings, these connections with the family and just the love. Then I started kind of developing as an individual in this company because I was hiring people who were filling my roles. Because when I first started, I was the receptionist, I was the funeral director, I was doing all the body prep. Like I was literally, it was just me and Micah and another gentleman um, in the warehouse, and that was it. So as I've grown, I've realized that there's a real problem that not a lot of people want to talk about, and it's the treatment of our funeral professionals, quite frankly. If you're not an owner, you're not making great money. It's a simple fact. Everybody thinks funeral people make money. We don't. We work ambulance and firehouse hours, and we get paid a quarter, of what they might get paid. So, um, I started really veering my focus on both the treatment of my staff and how they felt, and the resources they had to feel like they could better themselves. Um, if they can outgrow my company, I've done an incredible job as a boss for them, right? I don't ever want them to, but if they did, um, be their best self, I feel like that's the best thing I could do. So I just try to make them happy. I focus a lot on the social media outreach as well. So my primary focuses are my team and then our TikTok, basically. And we've hit over, I think, like 650,000 followers now. And I've taken on the title of influencer, which is not natural to me. Again, growing up in Montana, I don't think I had a cell phone until I was literally 18. Like I'm a little old. I might be dating myself a little bit there, but I I'm not natural to it, but I'm good at it. And so Micah makes me do it. And I'd like to do it. He doesn't make me do anything, but he made me realize that I really had the capacity to be influential,
Mm.
to make a really big difference, to question the norms of the existing industry.
Mhm.
My favorite thing that just happened, because I'm part of all of these forums, there was this question on this, funeral focused forum on Facebook, and it was like, "What are your thoughts on women not wearing pantyhose under their skirt or slacks or whatever?" And I literally just posed the same question down below, but men. I was like, "How do you feel about men not wearing panty?" And I just want to be the voice of reason to this
Mhm.
really um, wonderful, beautiful group of service individuals that are just so small-minded sometimes that to bring some perspective is what I hope to be influential on, and helping ownership see the value of their employees,
Mhm.
helping the general public see the value in a green alternative. Those are things that have really changed as I've matured into this role.
Yeah, beautiful. So, what are some of the barriers then that you're kind of seeing in your pursuit of that?
I can't be stopped, girl. I don't know. I can't be stopped. I'm just joking.
There are no
We
barriers.
we've been
Honestly,
warmly welcomed. We've won Washington State Funeral Home of the Year last year. We also won the National Funeral Directors Association, which is actually international, including Canada and Mexico, awarded us the Best of the Best Funeral Home of the United States, which they only choose three, or chose three last year. So that has been very validating coming from the industry because they
Mhm.
are a little antiquated sometimes. I mean, there's literal segregation that still takes place. There are things that the industry is slow moving, very, very slow.
Mhm.
So those things happening were just a beautiful like door that I saw that just opened wide open. That is, they can never take those things away from me. First and foremost, it's over. You guys did it. Now I get to spread my wings and really fly. And Katie's presenting in 2 weeks at the International Crematory and Cemetery Association in Kansas City. And we are presenting at the National Funeral Directors Conference in uh, it's Vegas, I think, in September. So we've been wonderfully surprised by the warm reception from in industry. And
Mhm.
then, of course, socials and the media exposure we've gotten prove that people are very interested. Um,
Absolutely.
and I love the naysayers because I've never ever interacted with a single one that I can't sway. Not a single one.
Yeah, what are some of the objections that people would have to human composting?
Oh, that it lacks reverence, that
Oh.
it's likened to composting apple peel scraps and, eggshells or whatever. But um, I don't think you probably thought for one moment anything we're doing is not reverent because we do everything so intentionally and we think so thoroughly through why we give so much and what it takes to give that. And yeah, so I would ask them what is reverent when it comes to a cremation or an embalming. Like talk to me who's done it about what it means to have reverence for a body.
Mhm. I love that.
But that's basically it. Not a lot of other hiccups for sure.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is just like a super wide open question, but any thoughts, reflections, or questions you want to leave listeners with that can help them to engage with thoughts of their own, death and what happens to them next, and maybe what to do before, or anything that you find that people are missing or lacking.
You know, it's interesting. I find that some people are really, really afraid of their own demise, but they're few, actually. They're more afraid of their person dying. Um, my advice is to have the discussion so that you know what your loved one's wishes are. You know what they want to leave behind, what their last act on earth is going to be. Um, do they want a huge memorial in New Orleans and just this amazing thing that people can visit for hundreds of years? Or do they want to return to nature and have a stone engraved for them that's it's all nature, but they still have that moment? Or do they just want to become part of the system again and just give back and not be known for their end, but for what existed during their life? um, Sorting out what people want is a really difficult thing to do, but once the conversation starts, it's actually innate to everyone to address it. Um, it's innate to everybody to break down naturally. I've noticed that people are so taken with terramation because the idea of incineration really unsettles them and they don't want to be burned. So I think I'm a water sign, so people might think I might want to be like, alkaline hydrolysis, which is what some people call water cremation. Um, I don't agree with that because cremation is actually the burning or incineration of something. But one might think, based on the fact that I'm a water sign and I love to swim and I love orca and I'm just like that girl, right? But I don't want that. I want to see my life live on in the houseplants and the gardens and of my loved ones, and I know that that's what they would want. And so I think just knowing that just because you assume something, you probably don't actually know the right answer, and the conversation's a top priority if you have someone in your life you love. And then if you don't, um, my suggestion is just to always have a really solid resource for someone who can follow up with your plans at the end. Because if you don't really have a person or you're estranged, you can end up, some people don't care what happens to their bodies, but you can end up abandoned. And I don't like when people are abandoned. It's such a bummer. And you want to love them and you want to be like, what did you do to deserve this? But what is your family like? And why is this happening? And there's just like, and that would be also a medical examiner or coroner would see these people who just get left behind.
Mhm.
So have the conversation. If you don't have someone to have the conversation with, there's a ton of resources online, and just make sure that when you make that decision, you just like stick it on your refrigerator or something. Just real easy to find. This is me. This is what I want. Because there's just absolutely no guarantee that you're even going to come back from work today, right? Like there's just no guarantee. So be knowledgeable and rely on your funeral professional because we're super resourceful. Yeah.
Brie, thank you so much for your time, for your insight, for your passion, and congratulations on all your awards that you'll continue to get forever and always. I'm positive about it. And thank you for the work that you do, because it's, even though I don't know the people that you're touching in their final moments, it's, they're human and I love them for that. And I'm grateful that there's someone like you out there who's making those moments special and helping us return to the earth.
That's so
Thank you so
sweet,
much.
Jenna. Of course. I want to just plug really quick if you want to follow along with what we're doing. We're at Return Home NOR for Natural Organic Reduction. So at Return Home NOR everywhere. Our website is returnhome.com and we just did a full revamp. So it's looking really flossy right now. And we do live chats on there. And so you can constantly be in communication with us, ask all your questions. So I encourage your viewers to dig deeper and just ask all the questions because there's so much more we didn't get to talk about today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brie.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's conversation. I hope that it was able to provide you with some insight, some knowledge, and hopefully some conversation starters for you and those in your life. If you have a topic you would like me to cover or someone you think would be great to have on the show, please let me know. And I look forward to having you join us in future conversations.